co-host. Go live on Facebook as well. Welcome everyone to Healing Conversations. Today we have, let's see here. Today we have Amber Hom on our call as our guest speaker. She will be speaking on the subject, the pure love in death. Hmm. Well, what a subject to tackle. Thank you, Amber, for uh, having us think and go into such a heavy subject that a lot of us, I know for myself growing up, death, and I can say probably everyone, it, nobody wants to die, and seeing people suffer and dying is such a heavy thing. But I know there's a different perspective that will be shared today, and so I'm so looking forward to your insights, your experiences, and your wisdom that you're going to share with us. A little bit about Amber. I've known her for like I don't know, 5, 6 years maybe, since 2020, I believe, late 2020. And Amber is such an insightful person, successful real estate broker also as well. Many conversations, weekly conversations that always uplift me. Her energy is very beautiful, and we're also blessed that we have her here uh, sharing her insights. So I'm so looking forward to have her share her insights. But to give you a little bit of background, besides her being a great real estate broker and also um, a very insightful person, she's been a student of consciousness for the last 30 years. A little bit about her in her own words, experiencing death at a young age, and through her travels and business, she's gained some understanding of what the essence of such an experience may be about. So we will be exploring death and the pure love that it appears to be. So Amber, before we get started though, I like to get us grounded in a short meditation. I invite everybody on the call to close your eyes. Obviously, if you're driving, do not close your eyes. But if you're in a safe place, I invite you to close your eyes with me and take a deep breath and hold it. Release the breath and embrace yourself, hug yourself, and say, I love me. I love you. I love my family. I love my coworkers. Might be hard to say sometimes. I love everyone, even the people that sometimes irritate me and that I might not even like. Can we just for a minute, in 30 seconds, imagine extending love to everyone unconditionally? But most importantly, bring it back to ourselves, loving ourselves unconditionally. Invite you to take another deep breath and hold it. Release the breath and say, I accept me, all of me, unconditionally. I accept you. I accept everyone. Again, even as hard as it may be to say that we accept everyone, can we just imagine accepting everyone just for even a minute or let's say even 30 seconds? Can we just even imagine that? Now I invite you to take one last deep breath with me and hold it. Release the breath and say, I'm doing the best I can, the best I know how. And so is everyone else. They're doing the best they can. And that's okay. That's all we can do. We're doing human just right. Now, invite you to open your eyes. Thank you, everyone, again for being here for the latest edition of Healing Conversations. Again, we have Amber Hom on the subject, the pure love in death. So Amber will lead us in such a, I can't even begin to describe what this conversation is going to be like. So I'm very intrigued to hear Amber lead us in that conversation.
No, we thank you so much for inviting me to be on Healing Conversations. I'm so grateful to be here, and I just love you and what all the work that you're doing here. So thank you for creating this space. Just to start with, I originally was not going to talk about this. I just came back from Hawaii. I think I told you that before the call, and I was meditating in Hawaii. And the original topic I was going to share with the group was the love languages. I just did that talk for a senior group for my real estate business in February, and I was going to give that same talk on the love languages. But when I was in Hawaii, serendipitously, the day that we arrived, the volcano erupted while we were there, and I was doing a meditation, and what came up was to share death and destruction and what that looks like with creation. Because without death and destruction, there can be no creation. And so that's what was like sort of, and again, to use the lava words, it was bubbling up inside of me to talk about this and for this talk. So just a little quick background on me. I had a pretty traumatic accident when I was a young child. I grew up in Southern California in San Diego. And when I was 4 years old, this was September 1978, I had an accident. I fell out of a four-story building onto the ground. My grandmother lived on the fourth floor of an apartment building, and I survived. Um, Again, across town that same day, a couple hours before that accident, there was the largest aviation crash to date in California history. 144 people, a plane crashed and died that day. So I remember being 4 years old and going into the hospital, and the lady saying, one of the nurses saying there was that this was a miracle, that this accident had just happened, all these people had died, and then I lived. And so that has stayed with me since I was 4 years old. And as I've moved along in my life and my business, it really has helped me to ask the question, what are we all doing here? And that really correlates to death, in my opinion. Like that, it's like, again, we have this window of time that we're here, supposedly. Again, nobody really knows, do they? Like, nobody really knows. And again, time is such um, an interesting construct for many people. Like, we don't know if it's linear, we don't know if it's all happening at the same time. Time is a construct that nobody really knows fully. So it's like, okay, I'm here in this body for this amount of time, and then supposedly I quote unquote die. I have been to 11 funerals in the last 2 years, and I've sat with people that are dying. I've gone through the Death and Dying Project. Um, and what I have come to found in these last 2 years post COVID, um, and dealing with, again, in my business, I work a lot with older folks and their kids. So I'm dealing a lot with people that are dying daily. And then again, I've had this experience of these 11 funerals, and the people that I have sat with, I've actually sat with own family members this last year who have died while I'm in the room sitting with them. And all I can feel, it's sadness on my part, but when I'm feeling them, all I can feel is pure love. And so my perspective on death is that it is just pure love, that we're returning back to pure love. Because when you see a baby is being born, everybody's so excited. The new quote unquote new life, you can just babies just exude love. I have been feeling that same way when I have been sitting at people's bedsides when they're dying, regardless of the personality that they have had while they were here. And most of the ones that I've sat with this last year I've all known them personally or had a like a more, intimate relationship. They're family members, friends, things like that. Um, and their personality tends to sort of just drift away, and this overwhelming sense of love just comes in.
Oh, looks like we lost Amber. Let's see here. I'm sure she will be rejoining us soon. Um, so let me grab my phone. Let's see. There she is. She's joining us back on.
Sorry about that.
Don't worry, I'm just texting you right now.
Yeah.
Everything was fine. Okay. So
Um, so again, this overwhelming sense of love, um, is just coming in as I've been sitting with these folks. And so most people are afraid of death and nobody wants to talk about it. And I'm just like looking at the amount of people that are on this call, because when you mention death to anybody, all of a sudden it makes people face their own mortality and what they're doing here. And my message, I feel like tonight, and my intention is to really help people feel better about that. Because what I'm starting to see is that wherever that is, it doesn't seem like it's a bad place and it's nothing to fear. That's my perspective of it. And again, I'm feeling like, again, as I'm moving along and I'm talking about it more and introducing it more into the culture that I'm living in, because other cultures outside of Western culture are not as afraid of death, it feels like, just from my travels. And I've been to a lot of different spiritual places. And um my dad's family is Chinese, and they practice Buddhism. And different religions talk about death in a very different way. But my sense, and again, I've been dealing with this for many years now, my sense is that it's really nothing to fear. And that's the message that I want to continue to spread to people. Because right, particularly in this, again, whatever's going on right now in this time and space, a lot of people are afraid. I mean, they're afraid in living, and then also afraid in dying. So when do you stop being afraid? When does that stop? So again, if you're most people, that's the scariest thing for them, is like, I'm afraid to die because it's unknown, right? But if you think about it, every day is sort of unknown. And so could you live your life in a way, or could we all live our life? And again, everybody has a choice on how they want to live, but could you live life every day? And when they say this, I know it's a little bit cliche. Could you live your life like it was your last day? Like, what would you do? Who would you love? Who would you tell you love? How would you behave with people? And again, that's my message with regard to death and dying. Last year with another one of our friends, Noe, no, you went to the Death and Dying Project with us too, didn't you? Sort of. Yeah. So that talks a lot about compassion, and that again is more of a religious aspect of dying. But my feeling is that religion has nothing to do with dying. And again, I know everybody has a different kind of maybe take on that. Um, but as I'm sitting with people who are going that direction, or people that are kind of teetering on the edge of, 1 foot here and 1 foot in the, what, if you want to call it, afterlife, if you will, um, there doesn't seem to be a sense of fear. Tends to be a sense of, like, of peace and love.
and whatever that is on the other side. I know I've had experience where I feel like I have been connected then once these people die to them on the other side. And what does that look like? That feels very peaceful. Even just this, I was in Hawaii this last week, and my brother in law's name is George. He passed away 2 years ago. I was at his bedside when he passed. And my husband and I were in Hawaii. And all of a sudden, we're by the volcano and we come across this place called Uncle George's Lounge. And he was my kid's uncle. He was Uncle George. So, again, little signs like that. And again, I could fully be like making all of this up. However, it does bring me some comfort. We went to another we were at a museum and while we were in Hawaii, and the we went to the tsunami museum, and the woman that was there, she was so nice and gave us a tour. And I said, "I'm sorry, what is your name?" And she goes, "My name is Heather, and my husband's sister just passed away in September." So little signs like that are making the piece of death that we're talking about today, it makes it feel so much more palpable, like we're not so heavy. I know when we first started this conversation, always like, oh, this is a heavy conversation, but I don't feel like it has to be a heavy conversation. I feel like it can be a peaceful conversation and a loving conversation and an easy conversation. In my business, I work a lot with, like I said, seniors, my real estate business. And I feel like I bring this into that a lot because a lot of those seniors are passing, right? So baby boomer population by 2030 is all going to be 65 or older. So what does that mean? That means we have this entire 76.5 million people that are going to be in this age where they're heading towards the end of their life. And what does that do to our world if all of those people are afraid to where they're going? So I would implore, again, as I'm moving along here, I'm imploring people to like start preparing themselves for, getting your affairs ready so that you don't feel so afraid or that you don't leave people in a certain, state when you go. And that feels like it's been, again, this is all very intuitive for me. Like I've been intuiting this for some time, for probably the last 15 years, with regard to um I'm not going to be in this body here forever, and that's okay.
I really like what you said earlier, and it's been a topic that we talked about maybe even a few years ago. Like, if we knew we were gonna die in a week, how would we live that week? And why are we not living like that?
And that's the whole crust, knowing, because nobody knows when they're going to die. Like, again, that accident that I had when I was a child, I question a lot, like, why didn't I die that day? Like 144 other people died that day. Why wasn't it my day? But one day it will be my day, and will I have lived the way that I wanted to live? Will I have loved the way that I wanted to live? And that's why I bring the death piece into I feel like knowing that I am going to leave here someday, and how I want to live every day and interact with people, and what energy I want to put into the world. Um, because I don't know, and you don't know, and nobody on this call knows what day will be their last day. So I would implore everybody on this call to sort of like, again, while that's not necessarily like comfortable in the beginning, um, it's sort of like it feels free to me to be like, okay, today I'm going to live exactly the way I want to, because I don't know if I have tomorrow. Like, no, there's no, and again, another cliche is, no, tomorrow is not promised to anybody. And that's a true statement because we don't know. I think somebody asked a question.
Okay, yeah, it looks like Josh said, do you think it's because there is or was potentially a purpose you were meant to fulfill?
That's funny because we talked about purpose a little bit last week. Um, I don't know that there's a one singular purpose for every person. My intuition is that we came here to have experience. We came here for the expansion of our souls. We came here to have these types of conversations. That's our purpose.
I agree. To me, it appears And I've sat and contemplated this subject. I've had, call it downloads, insights, ancestors, like what is going on here? What is this all about? And I don't want to take over this conversation because I could talk for days.
No, it's again, I love that.
Keep going. But yeah, what is the purpose? And it does appear, I agree with Amber, there is no heaviness to being human. That I do know. This is not a heavy thing. I know the majority of people make life very heavy. Healing Conversations is a space of unconditional love and acceptance. It's what came through. This is not a heavy thing being here on earth. We don't have to suffer. We can thrive and be happy, have peace, connection, and love each other and have compassion. That's what I saw. That's what I see. But we do have another question. Nicole's asking, any suggestions on how to have this challenging conversation with loved ones who have a difficult time with this subject?
My perspective is it always starts with an intention. Like again, I have this conversation a lot with clients and even my own family members. Is having an intention on what death actually is. Because again, can it be people call them celebrations of life when you go to their party afterwards? And really the sad part is just because we're going to miss them. I from what it appears is that it's really good wherever it is you go after you die. So again, can we convey that message? Is it okay, I'm sad, but are you who the person, I'm happy for whoever leaves here because that could be really freeing. And I don't know, and I'm just speculating on that, but it does feel like that to me. That leaving here is a freedom. And again, can that be a true celebration? Will we miss them? Will we miss the personality? Absolutely. And having that challenging conversation with somebody, um, again, feels like coming to it with a place of intention and love, because that's what this all is. Because when people die, people cry and they're like sad, but really it feels like it's a loving space, because if I didn't care about you, I wouldn't cry, right? I wouldn't if I, somebody died and they're gone and I wasn't sad necessarily. I don't know. I have felt less sad in the last 2 years for people that go. I feel actually quite happy and jubilant for them.
And I know we've had conversations about the caterpillar turning into a butterfly.
Totally.
Perhaps that's what this is. I mean, how transient and temporary is being human, right? Um, I know there's a lot of talk about expanding, our years here on Earth, and it looks like that's the direction that it's going on. I'm for one would love to never die, for the record. I think none of us here, wish death. I would hope. But really we don't know. And I know with Amber, I've shared my experiences of dead people, right? What happens after that? I really don't know. We had many discussions, but the fact is, I have seen things that I cannot explain, people that I don't know that actually existed, that I can look them up, and I'm like, what's going on here? Um, that was never part of my experience until the last 5 years, and I cannot explain what happens after death, and I cannot explain why, how does this work? But what I do know is that whatever this is just such a small portion of reality. What we see, we can only perceive such a small fraction. We really don't know what's going on. We pretend we know, but there's this unseen aspect of reality that is much orchestrating or part of connected to matter, this unseen energy part of life, and this matter in the body part of life. And so, yeah, death to me, obviously, I don't want to die, but it's not nearly as scary as it used to be. There's almost like this wondering, what is that all about? Do I get wings? Am I a butterfly now? What happens then? I mean, who knows? We really,
Well, and I think you said it so beautifully, Nori. It's a transformation. And again, where did we come from and where are we going? And from where I'm sitting, it feels like wherever it is we came from, you return to that. And that feels like pure love to me. And that feels like a peaceful feeling for people that are afraid to have these conversations about death. Because without destruction, there can be no creation, and vice versa. That's what it looks like right now from my lens.
And we're using labels to describe what is.
That's right.
I think destruction is a bad thing.
And it's not. And again, the guide at the Hawaiian volcano said without the destruction of the volcano, none of these magical islands would be here. So is it just part of the process? That's what it feels like. And that feels comforting to me. And I want people to feel comforted when we use that word death versus, oh my God, that's so heavy.
And I always say, consider this, all the stories that everyone here is subscribing to are probably stories that your parents are handing down to you, the religion has handed down to you. I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm just saying, can we for 1 second imagine that maybe there's other possibilities? Like, who has actually died and come back and said, wait, this is how it goes? Um, I don't know. I mean, can we just open can we create space to release these stories that we're subscribing to and be more open and make up stories that make us feel good? Because a lot of these stories that we're running with, they disempower us. Look at the majority of humanity is this. I want to write a book rewriting the whole thing about what it means to be alive, to do human, and what it means to die. Like this language that we're subscribing to in humanity is total survival language. It's based on a lot of fear. And I feel like what's happening in the world today is we're time for we need a new dictionary of words to describe how beautiful this gift of life is, and really making up stories based on personal experiences. When we release these limiting beliefs, it puts us in a little cage that make us afraid to actually live, right? I feel like that's where I came from. I feel so much more liberated now, and I know I still don't know anything. I got many blinders, just like all of us. And can we just remain open to see a different story, a different reality, a different way of being that can empower us right here, right now, to dig deep to how beautiful we really are and to really be alive when we're alive. So a lot of us are unconscious and dead, basically.
Well, and is that the walking dead right now? Like, are some people walking around already dead? And that's another perspective about death is like some people are not even really living now in this moment because they're not in this moment. They're not present. They're living in the past or they're in the future or they're walking around scared. And so it's like, is death even the actual physical death that we call reality? Is that even that bad if you're already suffering? Because there's a lot of people that are emotionally dead and suffering and walking around today. And it doesn't have to be that way. I think that's my message. It does not have to be that way. And again, facing the mortal death and talking about this a little bit more, it really does expand, I feel like, what we're actually doing here and how you're going to live each moment and each day that we're here. And that feels beautiful to me. And we're living in a time right now where people are wrought with fear. And I feel like the people on this call are here to light that way. Like this is the shift that's happening right now, which is lovely. Like I had somebody tell me like, oh, it's so bad. And it's like, I guess that's a perspective you could carry, but really could it be like it's this way so we can shift like the going back to the butterfly analogy, the butterfly can't get out of the caterpillar can't turn into the butterfly without a little discomfort. So like are we having some discomfort right now? Yes, and that's okay. And maybe that's just a sign for everybody to say, okay, I'm having discomfort, the butterfly's on the way. And that feels really soothing to me and peaceful.
Thank you, Amber. Looks like we have another comment. Lewis wrote, the ancients say that we are better than the angels as we choose to take on the cloak of humanity. It's and I cannot pronounce this, by vicissitudes, good, bad, pain, and pleasure. By doing so, we are earning our seat at the foot of God.
I love that. That's so beautiful, Lewis. That is so beautiful. I want to read that again. Beautiful. And that feels really expansive to feel like, oh, I am sitting at the foot of God by living in this human body.
I like that comment too. I've been sitting with, and I know Amber and Troy, and we get into these discussions of like the art of living, right? What does it mean to be human? A lot of times we hide from our own humanity, the emotions that are coming through, our authenticity, and we are simply unconscious doing life in a loop, like it's groundhog every single day. Um, by being human, we have the opportunity, the gift of creating this masterpiece, this art piece of contrast from being born, young child, teenager, adult, experiencing many iterations of our expression and embracing each one. We have the opportunity to dive deep into what we are. I know for me, I dove deep into being a good provider when I was a husband, and now I'm diving deep into seeing what is being expressed. And part of this is this new iteration of me is doing healing conversations, going from a business person to money doesn't matter anymore, and helping people is what brings me joy. I did not ask for this, yet when I dug deep, then that's what came forth, and here I am. And I feel like a lot of us are not really, if there is such a thing as purpose, is seeing like what is going on here with us and embracing that authenticity that wants to be expressed, embodying really. There's so many ways to describe this. We got to use words here. Um, Embodied presence, awareness of what this is, right? Embodying your humanity, being present to what this is right here, right now, the experience you're having, and with awareness, being able to see and pivot and create the experience you want to have. How do you want to feel? Being true to your expression, not betraying yourself, and thriving. How about that? Instead of surviving, thriving in this life, empowered, running like a smooth computer with no programs open, brand new computer out the box. But what happens with most of us, we have all these programs open. Where we walk like this. We're tired with life because we're not being authentic. We're not being present. We're not being embodied. We're discombobulated. We're incoherent. Anyways, I'll be quiet.
No, this is, again, I feel like this is again, how it is supposed to go, Noe. Like I said in the beginning, I wasn't even thinking about talking about death. And it has been such a on the forefront of everything I've been doing for the last several years. And I really think we need to talk about it more, just because it is a scary, heavy subject for a lot of people. And really, quite frankly, it doesn't feel very scary to me anymore. And I really want to impart that on other people and help them to live fully and be fully embodied right here, and know it's going to be okay when we do go to the other side. I've just seen too many, and like you said earlier, I've seen too many miracles after people have passed, um and sort of like feeling like something, they're communicating with me. And and is that happening all the time? Yes and no. I think has to do with awareness, right? Like when my sister's husband passed away, she was seeing all of these things that she wasn't seeing before, and I truly believe it was because her awareness became heightened because he was no longer here. And that has been such a gift, like when people are here and then they're not anymore. That's a gift of love. If somebody is like, sending you a sign or a message that only you would understand if you were close to that person. And I can't explain that. Like, I just can't. And again, is that a made up thing? I venture to say no, because there are things that have happened to various people and to myself from people that have passed on the other side where I'm like, it's impossible for that that soul not to be communicating with me on that side. And that feels peaceful, and that doesn't feel heavy with around death. That feels loving. That's the loving nature, I think, that we are in life and death, quote unquote. Because quite frankly, I don't even know what that means, life and death, anymore. Like having these experiences these last several years, I don't even quite even know it. You know what I mean? That's like the language that you were talking about earlier, is what does that even mean? Are there people walking around dead? Are there walking dead in our society right now? Absolutely. Are there maybe people living on the other side, partying it up, sending us little signs of love and hope? Absolutely. That's how it feels to me anyway.
We're so connected to
It,
the
it feels that way.
100% connected. If we only knew, like, I mean, I can't, I'm a feeler, I'm an empath, right? And to me, like, when I feel so loved, I feel so held. There's nothing to worry about. This thing right here, of course, I want it to last forever, but I know all is well. When you feel so connected to, it's undescribable. There's like fear just disappears. The only time I feel fear is actually when I'm connecting with other people and I'm getting all these, I'm like, what's going on here? Why am I discombobulated? And then I gotta disconnect and get myself back in coherency. But like, yeah, it's there's so much freedom.
I think there's another question. Do you think the way that you experience death has karmic ties to your past life? For example, dying peaceful in your sleep or suffering from a disease or dying young? That's an interesting question because karma means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Um, the way I understand it is karma is to help us see more clear. That's what karma is, like what I am putting out, what I get in return. So I've seen many people who have um, lived a quote unquote really like good life, and I've seen them sort of suffer a little bit at the end in pain. And that's a whole nother subject about pain. But um, I don't know that it doesn't have karmic ties, Nicole. Like I don't know that it does not have karmic ties to how you live in your past life. And again, I don't even know about past lives in terms of like we don't know if that's true or not. But what I do know is that when people are frightened, they have a different experience versus when they are peaceful and feeling love. That's what it appears right now in this space and time.
Right. I mean, I did not believe in past lives either. And then I got introduced to that subject. Right, Amber, and even then, the jury's still out. I tend to suspend judgment that this is the way it is. No, I have no clue
Yeah.
what this is. I can only say what I've experienced, and I have obviously not died and come back. Um, so jury's out. But I
The,
do feel
the jury is out. Yep.
right, Amber, we're creating our experience based on our perspective.
Totally. And again, if you subscribe to the belief that you came here to have an experience, a suffering death does not necessarily have to do with karma. Maybe it has to do with what you came to experience, period. It isn't like for a wrongdoing or to like pay a debt per se. It's maybe I just want to have this experience for the expansion of my soul. I want to know what it feels like to have a painful death, or I want to know what it feels like to have a peaceful death. Like I want to have that experience. And I think part of it as human, I've been doing a lot of work with the nervous system as of late. Um, a lot of that has to do with learning to regulate whatever this is. We're born with this computer. It's sort of like giving a 2-year-old a Mac computer and say, do something with this, and they don't know how to work it.
100%.
And so is that what this whole thing with death looks like? Like, I don't know how to navigate that because I haven't had the conversation, or I haven't had enough experience with it. And then all of a sudden it's a frightening thing. I think Tristan had a comment. Maybe it's the experience you agreed with your fellow souls as for Matthew's perspective is concerned. Potentially. Again, nothing's off the table, right? Nothing is off the table when it comes to this, because nobody, as far as I know, nobody gets out of here alive, and nobody has come back to tell me, like, oh, this is what it's like.
Right, and I think it goes back to how heavy do we want to make this experience? It would appear, I think Amber would concur, that a lot of people love to suffer. As much as we say we don't want to suffer, we experience this context of suffering all our lives. It's been handed down to us. And I feel like right now, when I realized that suffering is optional, when it was told to me that I glorify suffering, I said, "What do you mean? Then I started to see the stories that compose this character Noe, and the stories could not hold up with awareness, with the flashlight of awareness, all on the stories of suffering. They started one by one falling off. Who I thought I was, the character, and all the stories of suffering just simply evaporated. Or I don't know, there's still probably suffering that happens here and there. But now with awareness, it doesn't stand too long. It just cannot stand. And so we have the opportunity now to change our perspective. Can we experience peace, love, and connection and community? Can we experience lightness? Can we just experience a more vibrant, colorful, beautiful, delicious experience of life? I think that is before us. That's the opportunity that apparently, when I say God, consciousness, the universe, that beautiful, intelligent energy that sustains all life, that expresses everything. I think that's the opportunity that it, him, who, she, or however it is that this works, is presenting before us, and that's why we're having this conversation.
Totally. Tristan made a comment. He said, we also conflate soul and body as being linked in pain and suffering. A soul is simply energy, but a feeling entity in my hypothesis. I resonate with that, Tristan, heavily. And again, a lot of people do believe in pain and suffering in this body, and the story can change. And even pain can be, just from my experience with the Living and Dying Project, they talk a lot about pain being just a sensation. And again, is it good or bad? That's just a judgment. And again, it's funny that we equate death with pain. I always find that funny, versus, again, talking about death being pure love. That does not resonate with a lot of people, like, based on how many people are on this call and people wanting not to talk about death and leaving. People want to be like, death, it feels dark and it's pain and suffering. And again, I feel like the more we talk about this and shed some light on it, the less energy, the less that type of fear energy is going to be put out into this universe. And I think, again, I don't think that, I feel that so heavily that and to go back to Josh's question about purpose, I feel personally like one of my purpose is to contribute to a high conscious energetic field in this universe. Like, I feel like that's one of my, I don't even want to call it a job, but it's one of what I came to do. I came to contribute in a higher conscious way versus being terrified of my own death.
Thank you, Amber, for sharing such a beautiful perspective and being that for us right now. That's so beautiful.
Yeah, and I feel like I really want to keep talking about it, even though like it's not something that people want to talk about. Like I'm gonna keep talking about it in my business. And even again, I've seen people suffer when they're not prepared, their families suffer when they're not prepared for their death. So I feel like for me that I'm supposed to come here to help ease that a little bit.
Okay, looks like wait, did Tristan leave us? Looks like he
No, he's still there. I think or did he say bye or hi?
raised his hand. Tristan,
Hey guys, I'm just driving at the moment, but I figured I've had a conversation today about the death of my parents and my brother, and my friend and I were talking about it, and I was there at my parents' bedside when each of them passed, and I wasn't there when my brother passed, but just there was mourning, but there wasn't a sadness in the sense of loss past the grieving, if that makes sense. And it's not something I readily discuss with people because I don't think people are necessarily able to relate in that same way Amber's talking about. My parents both died before I started working with Matthew, but I was at my dad's bedside when he passed, and my mum, and I just had a feeling of peace and love. There was nothing unsaid. We had a great relationship, I had a great upbringing, and I didn't fear their loss. We were prepared for those because they were dying over time, whereas my brother just over a year ago just dropped dead. Wasn't expecting that. But again, I didn't feel a shock and a resistance to what is. And my brother's death being different to my parents is that I'd been working with Matthew for 3 years at the time. So I had that work to lean on and was in me. But the love thing is a beautiful thing. Where I was saying about, I think my hypothesis, and it's not true or false, the meat sac is the thing that has pain, and it's the biological device that the brain is, which is in resistance to the letting go of life as the physical knows it. And I think it's the conflict between the soul being ready and the body not being ready and prepared to let go, I think, is where the pain manifests. And the emotional pain, I think, very easily manifests as physical pain. Because I think that's how the human being is prepared to be. Broken heart that can cause physical ailment and pain. Loss can bring those similar symptoms, may not be the right word, but same manifestations of energy, depending on what the situation is. I think it's fascinating.
I think it's fascinating too, Tristan. Like again, no, not a lot of people want to have this conversation. And as I'm moving along here, I feel like we have to have it more and more to expand. Because
Yeah,
really the monkey mind wants to keep us safe, and there's so many people that have anxiety running around today. And I mean, the truth of the matter is we all are not going to be here at some point in this meat suit, right? We're just not, and that's
yeah,
okay. And the idea that my soul goes on and and I'm eternal, that feels really comforting to me. Like, and that feels like love. Like when I leave this body, maybe I will go into another body. I don't know. Or maybe my soul, it becomes the wind. I don't know. But that feels very comforting to me to know that this energy returns back to something that resembles love.
yeah,
And the people that I was here with, all the people on this call will return to that too, and I'll see them again. Like and in this form, I don't know, but I will feel them if I'm not in this form. And that feels so loving to me and so comforting.
yeah. And also came up in the conversation today is connection with self as well, self-love. And I think with a lot of people losing somebody they love, they're identifying with something outside of themselves, which is going to be lost, where it's within them already to be able to love themselves more and be more secure with themselves to mitigate that loss almost in a strange sense. Does that make sense?
Totally.
I think there's a lot of resistance to death, and there's because nobody wants to die, and so when somebody dies, it's, oh my God, very confronting. That means, wait, I'm gonna die too. But one thought that I've had, I know we haven't really talked about it, but I feel like we're literally killing ourselves too with our stories. That's been, I don't know, that's probably not something we might have discussed that before, Amber. We make ourselves sick, literally physically sick with our narratives of life.
Yeah.
What would happen? That's one thing I'm experimenting. What would happen if I don't make myself sick, but stories to disempower me, then bring me down? What would happen? Maybe yeah, maybe still die, but maybe we live a better experience of life. Maybe we live a little longer, but jury's out. I don't think nobody's ever really embraced that.
And I've been going through that in a sense with self-confidence or self-worth and empowerment. And I think it relates in some way too, where unless we see that confidence in self, we're not able to see that outside of ourselves either. I lost my train of thought. I apologize. I think it relates to what you were saying.
I'll also like to throw another thought out there. Consider this. Our ancestors are not dead. They're alive within us. So maybe we change the perspective of what this is. We are our ancestors and our descendants right here, right now. The things we experience in this life affect everything. And how can that die? Again, that's just scratching the surface on that conversation, but there's so many ways to recontextualize what it means to be human, what it means to be born, what it means to die. I think that's really what we're talking about here. Amber, can you take us through another time on how death can be viewed as pure love?
From my experience these last several years, watching how people interact with people that are dying, it can be so beautiful. So I'll give you a little example. I have a sister-in-law who did not care for me for a very long time. And I was with her for the last year and a half through her illness. And I saw that change. I saw the way I viewed her and the way she viewed me. She had no husband, no children. She was just on her own. She lived with her parents for a very long time, and then my husband's parents passed, and our relationship changed because we became caregivers for her, um, and she was more appreciative than I'd ever seen her before. And that turned into what used to be sort of an annoying relationship that turned into love. And the day she passed, I remember they were getting ready to move her from one hospital to another one. And here in Northern California, they were going to move her to Stanford. And my husband was just so tired and just heartbroken because his parents had just passed a couple months before her. And he was like, I just don't know how long I can do this, you know? And that afternoon she passed, and I felt like that was such a loving gift from her soul to him. Um, for her to be like, you know what? Like, I know this is hard on you. This is hard on me. I'm ready to go and transform into this next space. And I couldn't really believe it because we had had a conversation outside the hospital, and my husband was just like sort of like in a puddle a little bit and like, I'm just so tired and this is so emotionally hard on me. I don't know how I'm going to do this because we live about an hour from Stanford. So we would have had to like go, he would have had to go back and forth, and he was already watching her sort of, he was what we had watched her deteriorate for the last year, but it all transformed into this beautiful sort of loving, giving situation with her passing that afternoon. Not saying that he was all, oh, I'm so relieved. And there was a sense of relief there too. But also like it was a gift, a final gift from her. And I felt like that was so loving to him and to her. I mean, she was very, very sick for a very long time. And that there was this little ball of love for everybody to be like, she got to return back to source, and then he got to be able to like allow her to have some peace and for him to get some rest finally. And that's what this is all about, these experiences, right? This death experience. We had this experience together, and it turned into this, again, this loving situation in the end. And I truly believe it was because we were all aware. And that's where this all comes back to, is like, what is the awareness of all of it? Like if we had not been, aware that, okay, this is what's going on, and seeing it from a bigger perspective, it could have turned out in that we could have made up a different story about this, knowing. Like again, all of this is love if we choose for it to be. And that's the closing message tonight, is like, what do you think about death, and what's the story are you telling it? Are you saying that this is dark and painful, or are you saying this is loving and beautiful?
I prefer the latter, loving and beautiful.
That feels better, doesn't it?
I propose we get rid of the word death altogether. Can we change our language for humanity? Can we embrace new, inspiring, and uplifting, a new soul language? Wow, imagine
I
that.
love that. I love it. Again, we'll have to catch up on that on another call about, like, do we change the name of death to something else? Just it's a transformation, right? It's just a transformation.
That's what's happening. I mean, right here, this idea of a new language has been something that's been, I know I haven't talked to you about December, but like a new economy, a new word for death, a new word for everything, that all these words, like the word try, what a heavy word that is. I mean, that's a different conversation for another day. Uh, Language is okay. Anyways, I will stop there because then don't get me started on this conversation. But yes,
Well,
let's change
there's so
the
much energy around this language, right? There's so much
word.
energy around words and language, and what the meaning we make of it. So again, is that what the forgers on this call are doing? They're like forging a new path, and that's what it feels like to me. And I feel so honored to be here with all of you and having this expansive conversation.
We're also privileged and so lucky that we had you share with us such a touchy subject, but how light you made it.
Thank you, Noe. Thank you for creating the space. I can't tell you again. I feel just so happy to be on this journey with you. You're an amazing human. So thank you.
Thank you, Amber. Thank you so much. To close it out, I'd just like to invite everybody for just a super short 2 breath meditation, just to kind of get back grounded and get us on with our day. And give yourself a hug. How lucky we are that we get to sit here for an hour and really invest in ourselves and our self-care, to lighten up, to love ourselves a little bit better, to focus on us, because sometimes we get so discombobulated throughout the day, focusing on everything else, putting out fires, getting anxious, but we're bringing it back to us, bringing some lightness, some love into our lives. So I invite everybody to close their eyes. Obviously, if you're driving, don't close your eyes. And then take a deep breath with me. And as you take a deep breath, hold it. Imagine that just breathe in all your suffering, all the suffering of your family, the world for that matter. And just hold that and get ready to release it, and breathe out. As you breathe out, imagine that you just breathe out all that suffering and replaced it with loving kindness to yourself, loving kindness to the world, to everyone. How light does that feel? Open your eyes. I hope you guys feel a little better. I know I always feel way better after every call. I feel so uplifted. I really feel like we're medicine for each other. Amber, thank you for sharing your medicine with us today. Until next time, we do this every other Wednesday at 6 or Thursdays at 11. Next week, it'll be Thursday at 11. And I hope to see you guys there. Hope you guys have a beautiful night. Love you guys. Again, thank you, Amber.
Thanks, Noe. Bye, everyone.
Bye.